Hello everybody, and welcome to blog number 4, week ending 20th of March 2022. Going quite quickly, all of these. So we sort of know how this goes, and I'm just going to start off by saying how I feel at the moment. Well, I'm a bit indifferent, to be quite honest. This weekend has been a bit strange because on the 22nd I'll be going into my meeting in regards to how work is going and what they're going to do about my job position. I shouldn't really feel too badly about it, to be quite honest, because I know that the right is on my side. It's just that if you complain too much, I've always felt that you make a nuisance of yourself, and nobody is indispensable these days. And they could just easily go, well, fed up with this. If you don't like it, lump it, go. Um, so I'm hoping that they just see that I've done some great work. I've been there for 8 or 9 years, that they don't know me that much. I'm hoping I might be able to get a bit about what I'm about across, and just say the little things that I want. It's really more to do with the job position title and what I'm doing currently at the moment, which, although was great to be slow at the start, I should be now doing a lot more. So I'm hoping that things are going to change like that. So I'm feeling a bit indifferent. Um, I've had some great moments this week, and this weekend has been lovely because the weather has been so much better. You can't tell, but it's a lot brighter in this room. The sun is out. I've managed to mow the lawn for the first time this year, so that's cheered my mother up. It's a first cut, so I've got to get rid of the moss. That's going to be a horrible job. Um, but, you know, jobs are jobs, got to do those. So the news, nothing fantastically joyous. In fact, it's the same doldrums as before, possibly even worse. The war continues. Russia continues to bomb innocent civilians. I don't know the death count. To be quite honest, I think that would make me swear and make me feel very, very sad if I knew the exact figure. But I noticed when I turned the news on that Putin had a rally. Now that really annoyed me. A guy like that having a rally, um, asking, saying how well the Russians were banding together for this cause and giving his statement on why this was all happening. No, you're in the wrong. You're going to be looked at in history as a horrible dictator. Stop now. Um, and of course, you know, the Ukrainian president wants peace talks and Putin to come round the table again as fast as possible. Um, that's not a weak card, because if you listen to the news, there's been lots of standoffs. Just wants this to end. That's what we all want. So I'm fully behind all of that. Um, there's a there was a story that well, it made me chuckle, but also made me mad, because this is politics and I hate politics. But I think there's a gentleman called John Bercow. Now, if you don't know that name, he was the Speaker at the Commons, who was there for 10 years. And a couple of weeks ago, um, he was done for bullying. And they did a case study against him, which he still states he's not a bully. Apparently, he's got a business with his wife, and the the business claimed thousands of taxpayers' money to furlough his wife when he had 400,000 of the money in the bank for his company. That just tells me what politicians are like. I remember my granddad told me that there was a politician in his local town that had to go to meetings and charged for a taxi to take him to the local hall, and he lived 600 yards away from the hall, and he said it was because of his mobility. but he never had a walking stick and he never had a wheelchair, and he was seen all the time walking around the town. So it just shows me that if there's money there and you want to use it, they're going to use it, and it's bang saving the coffers to do something positive, like fill a few potholes or do the paths. I mean, that'd be nice. We always complain about potholes, but if you ever seen the state of the pathways that take you in and out of town, it's they haven't been done in 20 years. Atrocious. So if I did a nice little chat with my friend Mainmeister in the week, and he caught me just as I was listening to the news about P&O. Now, this was a big news story, and one that I was shouting at the TV about, because P&O have sacked over 800 staff. They've got into a terrible state, which I can understand. The pandemic caused all sorts of problems, but they have agencies that they hire their staff through. So what they decided to do, even though they took lots of government grants and money to get through the pandemic, they decided to axe their agents that they hire their staff through, so that they can hire new staff at lower rates. They even hired security staff to escort them off of the boats as soon as they pulled up into the port. Absolutely atrocious. Now, a lot of people have been saying, let's claim back that money that we gave them to get through furlough. Yeah, that's one way of looking at it. But apparently what the government has said at the moment is that they face an unlimited fine if they're found to be unlawful with this sacking. I hope they do find them unlawful. I don't think they will, because anybody can say, I don't want to use that agency anymore. But it was absolutely atrocious what they did. And on a minor story, you'll find that there are no free range eggs in the shops from Monday. What that basically means is chickens that are generally outside of the barns where they keep them in the batteries, they've been inside since November because of avian flu. So there is now an egg shortage for free range eggs, and they are now barn eggs as of tomorrow. Minor little story there. So what's been happening and how have I been feeling? Well, there's a couple of people that want to know a little bit about some backstory. Robert Morrison and Jambon seem to find it enjoyable to know about how I joined the DCP, the Digital Comic Preservation team. Well, what happened is that I had to sell my house in Manchester and move back because of sciatica. And it was 2.5 years of my life waiting for an operation for that. And I was heavily into, collecting comics. I had a lot of old ones that I wanted to scan and tidy up. So I started to scan and tidy them up. Some of them were British, but obviously the majority of mine are American. But the DCP is global, so they don't have too many people that scan British comics. So I posted into news groups a couple of my scans, and they got attention. And there was a fan and a member called Blasty and Ouroboros. Those were the two names that I remember. And they basically said, would you like to become part of our FTP? We've got a special area, and scan some of your comics. Now, you won't be doing the new stuff. We don't let people scan new stuff unless they've been around for a long time and they conform to a certain way of scanning, and you don't scan to that way. But we do want to present you with the opportunity to join, and they sent me over a document that says what the dimensions needed to be, what the resolution needed to be, all of that sort of stuff. And they wanted me to join their 1YATM team, which is 1 year ago this month. Now that's a team that deals with historical scanning and stuff that's a year ago that month. So my stuff was historical, and I said yes, I'd like to do that, because they also would help you with learning some Photoshop techniques, because you need to do things like joins. A lot of scans were over 2 pages, and there's, because of the gutter edge that you get in a book, you have to join those two together, and lining up is atrocious when you consider that this was just printed on paper and they're on opposite sides, so of course one would be lower than the other side, and of course the drawing's been split, so getting the lines to line up is the longest part of the job. Taken like that, I spent 3-4 hours on one. So that was quite interesting. The other thing is that you had to scan your stuff on a Wednesday. That's when the comics came out. So they sent a message for what the issues were the following week. On the Wednesday, you started scanning in the AM in UK. They started scanning at the AM in the USA, and then they were posted in various places like torrents and news groups that evening, which meant that people at the same time that were buying their comics in the shops were actually downloading the comics offline, online. Now, I always said that, well, I only wanted to join because I like the preservation side of things. I do it for myself, but I also know that you can't get British comics in any good condition these days. So I was happy to help with, first of all, with the UK stuff, and then I wanted to learn about pressing, cleaning up comics that I've bought that are also very old, in the 60s, but American versions, because those are what they call Silver Age comics. And I don't want to read those anymore because they're going to get very tatty just opening them out. I mean, it's all just wood pulp at the end of the day. So I'd got a lot of reprints that I could read of these issues, and I've got lots of omnibuses and trade paperbacks. So I picked out the ones that I wanted to do, and they were mostly from about 1965 to 72 is the years that I chose, and the British side of things was anything. So the first one I did, this was the first comic my father ever bought me, a UK issue. I'll just show you. It was POW comic, costing 7D. I don't think you'll see the year, but it's 1967. This was the first comic my dad ever bought me. And this was before Marvel had a UK branch. And you can see the paper's very poor. But let me just see if I can get to that. So you can see that one page was one block, and then they put the other blocks round it. That wasn't how it was in the original comic. But you can see the line drawing, being a black and white reprint, just stands out. It's just really, 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 really nice. And that's what started off my collection. Marvel UK started in 1972, just so you know. And I was delivering the newspapers in the late 70s, and they were still going then. They were mostly monthly and weekly comics, and because certain comics didn't work as a one shot, you know, where it was one character controlling the whole of the book, they managed to merge several stories into split up into the same comic, and then it went over 4 weeks. So one American comic was split into 4 weeks, so that means if there's 28 pages, if you do the math, there was about 4 or 5 pages, and then it was a to be continued next week. So that's a little bit of history there. I hope that's okay. Now, Martroid wanted to know a little bit about my fly dries. That's interesting. I've been working for Lloyd's Bank at this point for about 5 years. I was a risk assessor. Now, that meant that I had to look at the accounts and see whether they were worth having a bank loan. So I had to do lots of ratios. Interesting, not. So I got my first girlfriend. That's right, Polly. And we saved for 6 months to go on a fly drive holiday, and we went to Florida. I knew nothing about going on holidays. I just got my first passport. I'd never been anywhere other than with my parents in England. I'd been abroad, I think, twice before, and I think that was Germany was once. And I think I went on a skiing one near in France or Switzerland, where it was snowy anyway, and that didn't go very well. And that was a school trip anyway. So I'd saved and saved and saved. I had no credit cards. Got myself all of my traveller's checks, got my passport, flew over, and then you find out all the big problems that your agent that sold you the ticket didn't tell you, which is if you don't have a credit card back in 1992 and you're going on a fly drive and you need insurance and so forth, they want your credit card stamp so that if anything happens to your car during your 2-week break, they can use your credit card. Well, I didn't have one, so of course they want a massive deposit, don't they? So they took 2/3 of my traveller's checks, and I had no money. So I had to phone home and ask my parents to wire me some cash, and told them that they'd get it back because I'm not going to damage the car, and I'll be getting this money back. So I needed, first of all, that I needed to find the place I was staying at, get a motel or a hotel, get there, park the car up, get into the hotel, because it was a hotel, this one, and of course they love tips, so I had to get my tips out, and then I had to make a long distance call to ask, can you wire me some money so that I can get it to Western Union, and then I had to find a Western Union. So yeah, that didn't start off very well. But what else did I learn on that holiday? Well, we were along, I think it was called International Drive, I can't remember. We went for a Disney holiday. So the first thing I did was we went to Disney, and we went to the Universal Studios, and I think the other one's Epcot, yes. Funny thing about that place is that you'd learnt about Disney all your life as a kid, and I wasn't able to go. So basically when I got there, I was a little bit disappointed with Disney. Loved Universal. Don't get me wrong, Universal was great, Epcot Centre was great. Disney, well, there you are, you see the big Magic Kingdom all in the distance, you're going around, all lovely. My girlfriend says, hey, we're actually going to go into the Magic Kingdom. We get inside there, it's a gift shop. There they are, they're selling Mickey Mouse watches, Mickey Mouse t-shirts, just like any other stall in the whole of that complex. I thought it was going to be a magical kingdom. Well, bit disappointed, to be quite honest. The rest of the holiday was great though, because I didn't spend it all in Florida. I went to Daytona and I went to Miami, and went to is it Cape Canaveral? Yes. Went to the Everglades. So that was absolutely fantastic. So I've only got one question, and it's from my old mate, Mainmeister, and it came in so late that I've got to look at it off of my phone. Basically, he wanted to know, who is your favourite dye-bearded, this makes me laugh, dye-bearded, cantankerous, never reached level 2 Scottish YouTuber? Now, I had to think about this. I think McElroy's pretty good, isn't he? I mean, he's Scottish, got a beard, and I believe he plays games. And I dare say his production values would be a lot better. No, of course it's you, Alan, Mainmeister. The YouTube could not have you. We need you, okay? And he asked another question. And this one was a little bit more thought for this one. If the Commodore 64 never existed, in your opinion, what was the best 8-bit computer, taking into consideration hardware specs and quantity and quality of the software? and say hi to my mum. Now that's interesting, because I can't think of a world without the Commodore 64. And if the Commodore 64 wasn't there, what would the future be like? Because that computer emphasized sort of what the next range of computers were going to be like. It had so many custom chips. Its software base was so large. It had such a big company behind it. So if the Commodore 64 wasn't there, you'd have to look at the fringe stuff. And that came out in 1982. So what have you got? You got VIC-20, BBC Bs, Ataris, the Spectrum. And you have to go a couple of years down the line to get to Amstrad's, Oryx, Aquarius. Oh my God. So what would I say, based on software, quality, and the best computer that was out there? I still think, and I'm going to get shot down for this, the Atari 800. And that's so close to the Commodore 64 anyway. But even though that's such an old computer, it was way, way ahead of the market, but it was just so expensive. But did it have a lot of software? Well, it had Atari software. And it also had business software on it. So you've got to turn around and say, you could program on it, you could do your business stuff on it, you can play games on it. There you are, free things. Was there a lot of it? Not over here, but in America, yes. Over here, you could get it. So I can't turn around and say that it wasn't available. Okay. Quality of the machine. It was built like a tank. It was heavy. It had a total metal chassis. It had a Travelator keyboard. You know, you've got to look at it and go, you can't fault it for quality. It had graphics and sound. And those graphics were very much a little bit like the Commodore. So lots and lots of colors, sprites, hardware scrolling. Yeah, I'm going to go with the Atari. The Spectrums were lovely, and they changed England in regards to cost and what you can get and an introduction to computers, and we must never lose sight of that. But if we're going to talk about quality, the BBC would probably be close to the Atari, because that thing was heavy, incredibly built well. There wasn't too much software on it, but the basic language that was on it and what you could do on it, pretty darn good. And even the games these days hold up. So yes, the Atari 800 is my answer to you, Alan, at Mainmeister. So thanks very much for that question, and please keep throwing questions at me. Love them to death. What's happened this week buying wise? Not a lot. I'm broke. There you are. But what did I buy? So I had one steel book. By the way, everything I buy is a steel book. I don't tend to buy anything else, but I do buy subtly others. So this was a pre-order called Nightmare Alley. I don't know too much about it other than, you know, Del Toro, the director, I know pretty well. Apparently it's a thriller. It's got Kate Blanchett in it and Bradley Cooper. It's a noir sort of crime thriller. So it sounds up my street. I don't think it's going to be along the lines of Peaky Blinders. I don't think it's going to be along the lines of Once Upon a Time in America or any of those types of films, you know, LA Confidential. But hey, we'll see. That one's I'm looking forward to watching this week. And then I was in town last week, on Saturday, should I say, yesterday, because I had to get something for my mother that we couldn't get at the Sainsbury's. And I bought something called Malignant. Now, this is a film by James Wan. Now, I'd heard about this, and I heard it was atrocious. But it was a steel book, sealed at Kex, and it was £5. That's like dangling a carrot in front of a donkey, so I bought it. Now, reading up about it, it's a horror. So horror is something I'll watch, but it's the horrors of the 80s that I tend to watch. I don't see anything in the horrors these days. They're nothing like what I used to watch. And I was listening to a review on Radio 5, and I went back to when he reviewed this, and he said the first hour and 5 minutes is absolutely dire. And how anybody didn't walk out of the cinema when it was released, nobody knows. But you have to stick with it, because the last 25 minutes is bonkers, and the twist at the end is great. So for a fiver, I've taken a chance, and I bought this. Now the last thing is a little bit for Panther. I've been waiting to sort of like mention Panther actually for a couple of weeks, because he wanted to know what music I listened to. Now, I'd like to go into the history, but I haven't really got a lot of time, Panther. But just to give you a background, my older sister ridiculed me for the music that I listened to. She knew all the weaknesses I had. She knew I was bullied at school. She knew that I have a lack of confidence because of that. So while she was listening to Blondie and buying the latest Now album and so forth, my father and I liked instrumental music. So I was more into TV theme tunes, movie theme tunes, anything that was sort of like classical, had piano in it. So she would tell people at school, you know, I listened to the Minder theme or something, and I would be ridiculed again. But so it's hard sometimes to talk about music because you think people are going to ridicule you now. Well, if anybody wants to ridicule me at 53, go ahead and do so, because I know that I've listened to a spectrum of different types of music. There are stuff I love about them, and there are certain genres that I just can't listen to a lot of it, but I won't ridicule it. And here's a thought for you. Anything that's musical back in the day had to be put onto musical paper and notated. Okay? So all of that stuff that we were talking about, it's bloody awful. Somebody had to write down all the notes for that and publish it as sheet music. So TV theme tunes can be as complex as a pop tune. And classical music, well, that bewilders me, because there are so many instruments and each of those have got sheet music and they play a part in the whole of the tune, that basically that's got to be the most complex form of music there is. So if my sister wanted to ridicule me, I think I was on good standing. So what did I listen to this week? Well, I've been going through my music collection, not digitally, but the CDs that I've got, because they're mostly in boxes. Like anything, I sold a 3-bedroom house, moved back into the family house, and moved into a room that was supposed to be a granny flat for my gran. You know, and she died early 90s. So this is sort of like converted for me, and that's why there's no shelves and why everything is a mess. So I was going through, and I remembered these two soundtracks that I've got. Okay. By a composer called Michael J. Lewis. Now, you might not recognize some of these that I'm going to be talking about, because unless it's John Williams or Georges Delerue or Jerry Goldsmith or Hans Zimmer or, you know, James Horner, you know, the big ones, you probably won't recognize some of the fringe ones. Well, this guy did some absolutely fantastic scores. There's a film called The Medusa Touch. That's a well-known one, but these two I love to bits, and I've got MP3s of them, so one of them is not even opened. But the first one, look, is Theatre of Blood by Michael J. Lewis. This happens to be a limited edition to 1,200 units. I think you can still get it. If you don't know Theatre of Blood, it's not by Hammer, but it's a horror film like Dr. Phibes, where he is an actor who does just Shakespeare plays. He's ridiculed by the critics, and he decides to take his life, only it was a fake death, because he wanted revenge on the critics. The critics were just too harsh, so he goes around trying to kill all the critics. and he uses his daughter to help him. It's a horror film of its time, 1972, but it's an absolutely fantastic film, and it's one that I remember watching with my mum, because my mum used to let me watch horror films when I was about 7 or 8 years old. They'd be on BBC One or BBC Two at 11 o'clock at night on a Friday or something, and my mum would say, "I'm just going into the kitchen to cut myself a sandwich. Do you want one?" And all these sorts of things. And it sort of took the edge off of the film a little bit. But this is definitely one, if you're into your music scores, to get. It's such a lovely score. It's a beautiful score, is what I'd like to say about it. And the next one is one that was never released. It's two scores: The Man Who Haunted Himself and the film 92 in the Shade. And I don't know if you can see the back, but it says for promotional purposes only, not for sale, because it was never released. Now, I bought this off of a private seller because I wanted the score for The Man Who Haunted Himself for, must be 10 years before I knew it was even out. The Man Who Haunted Himself is what Roger Moore classed as his best film. He always said he enjoyed making it and he loved it. It's a cult classic. It's a 1969-70 film where he's a standard London businessman working in London, and he has a car accident, and after the car accident things start to happen in his family. It's got a very jaunty 60s main title, which apparently sold very well in Europe and was #1 around Europe. It didn't do anything, I think, in England. But once you listen to the tune, you'll be humming it. As a film, I've managed to find it on Blu-ray, so that made me very happy. And I was listening to these while walking this week because there weren't too many podcasts for me to listen to. That's the trouble when you've been walking as long as I have, that you run out of podcasts to listen to, and you then have to go and find something else. So I was happy that I found these, found my MP3s of them, put them onto my phone, and listened to these. So that was very enjoyable. And we've reached the end. Thank you very much. Please, I hope you get some enjoyment out of listening to this waffle and probably knowing a little bit more about me. And please, hopefully you'll join into the next one. And if you've got any comments or questions like Alan, please send them. I'd love them. Thanks very much. See you next week. Bye.